Welcome to the Story Geeks podcast. I'm Jay.
I'm Sisa.
And I'm Daryl. And today we are going to dig deeper into Moana. And we have a very special guest with us today. We have actor, singer-songwriter, and writer Sisa Grey, who is actually one of the voice performers from Moana, among many other things. So, Sisa, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, boys.
It's an honor to have
pleasure. Thank you.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what else you do? What are you working on right now? Where can people see you?
First and foremost, besides being the daughter of the Most High, I am a wife and a mother to 4 amazing children. My husband is Timon, and right now I just finished doing some work on a new show coming out on Showtime called Smilf, and that airs to this weekend actually. And also writing my first and shooting my first short at this moment. So,
awesome.
Yes.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah. You know, actors, they got to keep doing something.
Yeah. It's always the next thing.
An artist actually has to keep doing something. Yeah.
Marianne Holland, who's the chair of our board, is an actress. And so I met with her last night, and it was the same thing. It was like, what are you up to? Auditioning. You just gotta be out there.
It's a hustle,
yeah. It's a hustle.
You're
it's
just
a
putting
hustle.
yourself out there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yep.
pretty much.
Yeah. Cool. Well, today we are going to talk about Moana, and I love this movie. A lot of people love this movie. A lot of people who have been on our podcast before love this movie.
Love.
And so because of that, we actually recorded a couple of videos of people to kind of give us their takes on it, what this movie means to them. So we'll go ahead and show those real quick right now before we dive in. We have one from Sandra Demas, who is a previous guest on this podcast and a big lover of Moana.
Nice.
And then we have one from my favorite person, my wife, Jamie, who will talk about what it means to her as well. So let's just take a minute and watch those.
Hey, I just want to share a couple of thoughts that I have about Moana. Something that really resonates with me and Moana's story. For her, she's challenging her family to really question the things that they've believed and that they've held to without really thinking too deeply about it. And that resonates with me because I think of my faith and I think of just the idea of challenging what we know and things that we might have just done by ritual, that we are actually going to step into that and press into that, ask questions and think deeply about it. And what we find on the end is that we get reconnected to who we truly were. And for Moana, it's that she's truly a warrior, and so are we. We are called to be warriors. So that really resonates for me. And then just thinking about the truths of Moana, I think of that scene with Moana and Te Fiti, and she's telling Te Fiti, this is not who you are, you know who you are. So I think when we think about who we are in the image of Christ and our identity in Christ, we come to be deeper, more deeply connected into who he's made us to be. For Maui, he's made to be forgiven. For Te Fiti, she's made whole again. And for Moana, she's bold, and that's amazing. So I love this film because I really connect with all of those things throughout it. I love the moments, and I especially love the music by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Well, what I appreciate about the story of Moana, and specifically Moana's journey throughout her life, is that she's able to overcome some of the barriers that other characters in the movie seem to be hindered by. Her dad and Maui and Te Fiti all experience suffering and pain as something that traps them in fear, basically, and holds them back. And she is uniquely able to overcome her fears, and also in the process of doing so, serve as a catalyst for each of those other characters overcoming theirs as well. So it's really a powerful story, and she is one of the most powerful, and by that I mean empowered, female characters in the Disney universe, I think.
So that's just a couple of perspectives from Sandra and Jamie. Thank you guys for submitting those. It's just cool to see how much this movie means to people and just kind of how the truth of it communicates out. So with that in mind, let's dive in and let's talk about it. So a lot of big themes in this movie. Identity, redemption, fear, calling, suffering, legacy, a bunch more that I'm probably not even mentioning. So let's just kind of start out real high level. So, Sisa, why don't you talk a little bit about what does this movie mean to you? What drew you to it when you got the opportunity to work on it? And...
Yes. This movie meant a lot to Pacific Islanders, all of Polynesia. Of course, they had Lilo and Stitch.
Right.
Maybe back, I forgot what year.
90s?
In the 90s. Yes,
Yeah.
It was in the 90s. So that one catered specifically to Hawaii. So this film meant a lot because it catered to a more, broader, and it made us feel more like there's light shining on to our people.
Yeah.
Because, hardly ever, So with Disney, they did a great job with this. And working on the film, getting a chance to talk with John, the directors, the two of them. They were in the studio with us. And when we all first gathered as a group collectively to create the voices, some of them were doing Hawaiian pidgin talking. And then they had to stop and remind us that this is not focused on Hawaii. This is actually going to be focused on the islands of Samoa, Tahiti, Fiji, and in that area.
Yeah.
So that was a big awakening for me because I said to myself, wow, this is amazing. You're actually going out more, not just focused on Hawaii, which Hawaii is a big part of our lives. And, a lot of people see Hawaii as Polynesia, but
Right.
there's so much more.
Yeah.
So with that, it was really special for us, especially as a Samoan. It was something that was beautiful that Disney came out with.
Yeah. Jay, how did it hit you when you saw it for the first time?
I think that I don't think there was any. It wasn't any didn't hit me in a deep way. Not as much as Sandra has talked about or you have talked about, or it wasn't that deep of emotional journey for me. But I think that there's something just special about the film because of how inspirational it is, and how. I mean, I don't know. I just love water. So when I see
And the water's
the ocean,
amazing.
Oh
yeah,
It looks so good.
the water is basically a character in the film.
No,
It is.
Right? I think that's just fantastic, and I love that aspect of it. And so as we see it's not easy to capture waves.
No.
Yeah.
Especially we've seen it in 2D, and it's usually a little bit, it just feels a little bit off.
Yes.
But they did such a good job of capturing the ocean and just the waves and the wakes and everything.
Yeah.
I was kind of geeking out on that because I love the ocean. But it's a fantastic film, very inspirational, and obviously so many people love it that there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on what you just said. It was
Yeah.
about the water because when I had talked to John, and after we had lunch, we came back, and I said to him, you have to listen to my brother's song. He just wrote a song about fire knife dancing, and it was beautiful. We heard it, we sat there, and we listened to it. And then he told me, he said, Sisa, we almost went with fire as their story.
Oh, interesting.
But as they went to the different islands, they came to realize that the water is what connects us. So you're actually on point there. The water is what connects all the Polynesian islands.
That's cool.
So yeah, you're on point. I love that.
That's cool.
And as a bodyboarder, you care a lot about capturing water.
Yes. And I don't know what it is. I love water for some reason, and I don't know. When I watch this film, I actually have this in my notes, but I'm a quarter. I'm a lot of different ethnicities, or I should say nationalities. Yes. But one of them is Croatian because my family came from a little tiny island and we're fishermen.
Wow.
So there's something about that I'm like, I love the water too. It's got to be connected there somewhere. Yeah, so I love this I love seeing islands. I love seeing water, and just that whole aspect of it is fantastic.
Love.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts is when she was a baby.
Yeah.
The water's trying to just make it.
Yeah, that's cool.
They hit that on the nail.
Yeah, they really did.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've said before on the podcast that this is my favorite Disney movie. I told Jay this morning that it's my favorite animated movie.
Yeah.
And it's probably in my top 10 movies of all time.
Wow.
I just really love this. This is the kind of movie, I went to see it originally with our son.
Nice.
Because, it's a kid's movie. So I thought, I'll take him and, I can watch any kid's movie once. And this is one, whenever he wants to watch it, I'm like, all right, put it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's Lego movie, I'm like, I can't handle Lego movie right now. I like it, but it's loud. Yeah. Aladdin, whatever. The Moana,
music.
okay.
Oh my gosh, the
Yes.
music alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible. So, Yeah, it's a special one for me too, and for our whole family.
Yes.
So, let's talk a little bit about Moana as a character. So she has a lot of different sides to her identity. Mm-hmm. She has the cultural side, being a Pacific Islander. Although we're not given a specific culture in the movie.
No.
It's more of an amalgam.
Yes.
A Polynesian amalgam. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she has that. She has her identity as a daughter, the daughter of the village chief.
Yes.
Her own personal identity, her desire to be out on the water, her worldview. And then just kind of the identity that's laid before her as the eventual chief of the village and what that status could mean for her. Mm-hmm. So, what about her identity? Like, what kind of stuff resonates with you guys?
Oh gosh, as a Polynesian woman,
Yeah.
girl, it was. I identified with her a lot because my father is the high chief in our village.
Really?
So, yes. Wow. So there are different. What do you call it? Types of chiefs, and my father is the highest one also, as well as my father-in-law. No, actually, my father-in-law is a talking chief.
Okay.
So my father, being who he is and the status of the high chief, but it's interesting too because my dad's an entertainer.
Oh.
So he's not quite your, chief in Samoa still sitting there. He has to go out and, Yeah. But I relate to it a lot because growing up under my dad's roof, it was hard because we were expected to do certain things. The girls have your place. The boys are treated differently. And I have an older brother. So there was always you were treated differently. You were told to do things differently. You could do certain things. Girls, you couldn't. You got to stay home. So for her, with Moana, the dad always holding her back, saying, no.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, that is all too familiar. And but with her, the calling in her life was so deep. And it was just constantly drawing her to it. I relate to it as a performer. We were always Pacific Islanders. It's not common for us to go out there and do certain things, and we're always told to do this. So for me, it was always like, oh my gosh, you got to do this. I have to do this. I have to get into performing. I have to. And my dad and mom didn't support it at first. They didn't. They didn't think it was something we should be doing. And especially with us girls, we had to specifically, all right, take care of your family. You have a family. Stay home. Take care of your family. You shouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah.
So definitely relating to Moana's story, it touches.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, can really relate to her.
What about you, Jay? What stuck out to you?
Well, anytime I see somebody put identity on something, I'm like instantly like, yeah. Let's talk about identity.
Yeah.
Like,
it's always a good topic.
Yeah, it's always a good topic. And one of the things that became very apparent to me, because right now our culture is very focused on identity, right? Like identity is a big conversation. And I think I'm gonna take this in a direction as a Christ follower, which I know that we don't always take it this direction, but this is my spiritual perspective, and you can have yours. But as a Christ follower, we're called to put our identity in Christ first. And I think that's interesting because we see this even in the film. Like there's culture, there's family history, and then there's life situations that can impact us, right? That can cause us to have an identity.
Yes.
And I think that there is meaning in that. Like you just described really powerful meaning in that. But on top of that, I don't think that those things can define us. Because like you said, you couldn't let it define you, right? You had to break out of the identity that other people had for you.
Expectations, yes.
Exactly. Just as Moana does. And I think that that's really important to think about, no matter what your spiritual perspective is, no matter what your cultural identity is. You have to, I think beyond those things and not let them define you. You can find meaning in them, but what if your culture becomes toxic?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
right?
true.
Like, and we've seen this happen before, so this is not like this wouldn't happen. Just contrast our current culture with 1930s, 1940s Germany, right? Like you want to identify with Nazi culture, like forget about it. Like that's just not a thing.
Yes.
What if you're the son or daughter of an alcoholic and you're letting your family tradition define your identity? Like also not a good idea. And it can be, I'm using alcoholic as just an idea.
Oh, yeah.
Your parents could have been murderers or whatever they could have been, right?
Yes.
And of course, life situations are always changing. So I identify as, we were joking about this earlier, but I bodyboard all the time. I love the ocean, but I can't identify as that. I can identify, that can be part of my identity, but it cannot be rooted in that. What if that's taken away from me?
Yes.
Then I'm not worth anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think you have to find worth in something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just me. I think I think what Moana goes through is this process of understanding what her history was and what she will become out of that, but not necessarily be defined by it. And that's, I think, a good message.
But it's a good picture of how your story shapes who you are.
Totally.
So that's my son in the background in case you're hearing baby noises.
Oh yeah.
That's Moana.
He's a part of the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. He's the fourth guest.
Yeah, for me, her identity is just inspiring because it's this picture of overcoming fear and overcoming suffering and really kind of living into who you're meant to be. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's kind of encouraging from a bit of a weird angle because as a father, I'm a protective father, and my wife would probably say slightly paranoid, which is fair. So I actually kind of resonate with the chief at the beginning of this movie, where he doesn't want anybody to go beyond the reef. I don't have a best friend that died or anything like that, but I resonate with the fear of my kids getting hurt and something happening to them. So to see this movie where it's like a success story of the kids stepping out and becoming who they're meant to be, and that in turn inspires the father.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, that comforts me.
Yes,
you know,
it's like,
I mean, not that my son is Moana, but still, like, ideally, it comforts me.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about suffering. We'll get dark for a little bit.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
So there's a lot of people suffering at different points in this movie. I just talked about the chief. He suffered the loss of his best friend,
right?
And he has a certain response to that. His response is to protect everybody. Moana is suffering sort of the restraint of not being able to get out and explore who she is. By the way, we didn't say this before, but obviously, spoiler alert.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna.
Hopefully you've seen it.
If you haven't seen it, go watch it and then come back. But I feel like maybe podcasts shouldn't have to say that anymore. Like if you're going to listen to a podcast, you can assume spoilers. But
when it says we're digging deeper into Moana,
I know you can't do that.
Don't click on it if you haven't seen it.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
So, and then there's other pictures of suffering too. Obviously, Tafiti suffers the loss of her heart.
Yes.
And Maui suffers the loss of his hook and his identity, and we even know that he suffers his separation from his parents when he's a kid. So there's a picture in this movie of what suffering does to us and how we respond to it. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you kind of see suffering and responses within the movie, within life?
Right now, for me, when you mention all those types of suffering, the one thing that shot to me was the village's suffering.
Yeah.
The village's suffering, no one sees that, but they see the dad, Moana, and Tafiti, but not realizing the people, and it can apply it to what's going on in the world today. We don't know we don't see all that's going on, but in the meantime, the entire body is suffering somehow. So I relate it to that a lot, especially growing up in the islands. So much going on in the government, so much going on that we don't see, but we see it with the people. When there's hardly any food there, and people are just trying to do whatever they can to make money to take care of their children. And there's a lot of third world country poor spots in the islands of Samoa. Yeah. So my heart goes out to the villagers. I don't know why that stuck out for me, but the villagers are the one that suffered. And of course, I see Moana. When we go back to Moana, I relate to her as well because the suffering that she's going through. There's been a calling in her heart, and she can't let go of it. It's been put there for a reason.
Yeah.
So it's she can't help but gravitate towards it. So she's suffering slowly inside, but she gets redeemed at the end.
Yeah.
Not just herself, but also Te Fiti. But yeah, the suffering that she had gone through was really, it impacts, we all relate to it as far as Pacific Islanders, especially with our parents telling us what to do. But yet inside our hearts, and it comes to what they said, honor your mother and father.
Yeah.
But at what point?
Yeah.
Right.
But we still have to respect and love them, still do it in a kind and loving way.
Yeah.
So that's, for me, what stuck out.
Yeah, that makes sense. So for me, the thing I always ask about when I ask about suffering or the topic of suffering is, in what are we placing our hope? And I think it's important because suffering is this thing in our lives that feels very brutal and very unnatural.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yes.
we don't feel like we were made to suffer.
Yeah.
Right? We don't really feel that way. We definitely do suffer.
Yes.
All of us suffer in some way, shape, or form. But it doesn't seem like it's our intended state of being.
No.
It doesn't feel that way. And I know that, like, for me, suffering then can start to feel really meaningless or devastating, right? And I think that means it's also easy to start to feel despair or a lack of hope. So my mom died of cancer in 2012. If you listen to this podcast, you know that. Because we talk about it. It's because of what it's done to affect me. Yeah, no, it's fine. But if she placed her hope in being made well
Yes.
on earth, then it's a misplaced hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're suffering, if your only hope is for that suffering to be alleviated, what if that's not a possibility?
Yeah.
Then it does feel like you would only find despair. So then the question for me then is like, well, how do you find something beyond yourself? How do you find something beyond your family? How do you find something beyond your circumstances wherein we can place our hope? It's just like another analogy is like a soldier, right? That's going to walk into battle.
Yes.
If you're completely focused on your own self-protection, you are not an effective soldier.
No.
You're looking to the bigger picture. You're looking
Yeah.
to, I'm not only going to going into this battle for my fellow countrymen, I'm doing this for people back home.
Exactly.
Or if it's your home that's being attacked, you're doing it for your home.
The greater good.
You're doing it for the greater good. So I think when we do experience suffering, and I think we see this in the film, we need to focus on our values and on something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And I think that she does that because she does feel fear. It's not a problem to feel fear. It's about what we do with fear that matters. And Moana maintains her values. She sees something beyond herself.
Yes.
Right? Because she even puts aside some of her own fear when she first tries to go out and the waves kind of get to her. She's like, no, I have to keep going for this.
Yeah.
And it's because she sees what Te Ka is doing
Affecting her.
Exactly, affecting the whole island.
Island. Yeah.
And so what she sees is, I'm doing this for something bigger than myself.
Yes.
And if she didn't see it that way, then I don't think that she can endure the suffering. She has to see something bigger,
Yeah.
or else. And I don't even think like her father doesn't quite see that because he just thinks self-protection.
Daughter, my daughter, my
Exactly.
daughter.
Or even his what do you call it? Clan, tribe.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Village. Yeah.
Village. Yeah. Even his village, right? His village needs to be protected.
Protected. Yeah.
And he's not willing to take the risk, but she is willing to take the risk because she sees the bigger picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I just think that is a cool thing that the movie teaches us through some of that. Because her grandmother is there to constantly remind her of what her values
The village
are.
crazy lady.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have a village crazy lady?
Oh yeah, we have. Oh my gosh, every family. I'm sure.
Every family has that. Yeah. Yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
What you hit up on there, yeah.
Yeah. For me, a lot of it is about the response to suffering. Because you see a lot of different pictures of that in this movie.
Yes.
And her triumph is sort of her response to her suffering.
Yep.
But Maui's failure, or what's holding him back, is his response to suffering.
Yes.
His just kind of self-wallowing, I'm nothing without my hook.
Yes.
Right.
So I guess for me, response to suffering sort of leads me to ask another question, which we can go into now. Who do you guys think, who's the villain of this story? And I've inspired silence, which is great for podcasts.
Yeah.
I would say self. Sometimes it's,
Yeah.
there wasn't, like everyone else, we all make bad choices. We
Yeah.
all make bad decisions. Maui made a bad one.
Mm-hmm.
He took something that wasn't, supposed to be taken. And greed. Those are the things that I think is the villain in this story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that, so I identified 3 specifically, all because of self. So a lot of times when we talk on this podcast, what I always tend to say, and this is what's fascinating, because different worldviews will give you different perspectives on what being a villain means, right? My worldview is that if you are a villain, it means that you are self-focused or even focused on your immediate
Needs.
or your immediate like friend group or family group or whatever,
Yes.
at the expense of other people's, right? But being unselfish means I'll give up of myself to help everyone else.
Yes.
And so I think that I think that I'm just kind of piggybacking on top of what you said.
Please.
Like Maui, Tafiti, and Tamatoa all are self-focused, right?
Yeah.
So when I say Tafiti, what I mean is Teka, because
Right.
Yes.
when her heart is taken from her, it's almost this thing where when her heart is taken from her, not of her own choice, by the way. So
Well,
she didn't choose
that's
to
a
be
question
villain.
I have. Like,
Yeah.
that's not clear. Like, from the movie, it's not exactly clear. Like,
Well, it seems like Maui stole it from her, though.
he
Does
did steal
yeah.
it from her, but how much? I don't know. I just wonder, like, what's the response there? Like, is
Right.
it a completely involuntary response? Like, without my
That's-
heart, I turn into a demon? Or is it like, is
That's
there
exactly
some...
why I put Teka in this category, because it was like, if her identity is wrapped up in
that
only the heart, and then without that heart, she just takes over this villainous creature, then why is it that she needs that, right? But so there's that, because I think that that's one of them. I mean, Tamatoa is the most classic villain of all the villains.
Yeah.
He only cares about vanity,
Yes.
and his own vanity.
And really just an excuse to get Jermaine Clement into the movie.
Of course.
Exactly. And I think Maui is probably the most interesting villain, because he actually has the most depth to him as well, meaning that he's almost self-focused throughout the entire film. The only time he's not is when he comes back.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was his turning point.
Yeah, and he really in fact, the only reason he was doing heroic acts for the humans at the expense of Tafiti was because he wanted to be the hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very self-focused reason for doing those heroic things. And so I think that his journey is learning to be valued by people, not just by his own selfish desire, but by just being a part of a community.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So he's a very interesting villain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get to do this, but I meant to ask my son who he thinks the villain
Bad guys.
of the movie is.
You should.
Because I'm pretty sure he would say Teka.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe Tamatoa.
Right.
Maybe the Kakamora.
You got the coconut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't get a chance to
on
ask
Mad
him.
Max. Love that.
Yes, it
a
was.
great
Yeah,
take.
yeah. And their ships, our friends at the Story Cauldron did a podcast on Moana.
Nice.
And they talk about how the Kakamora are like amazing ship builders.
Yeah.
Like they construct these ships that break apart into 3 ships and stuff.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
So just really quick to pause before you continue that thought.
Yeah.
You definitely should go listen to the Story Cauldron's podcast on Moana.
Yes.
Now, they are not Polynesian or Pacific Islander.
No.
But
They're from Idaho.
They're from Idaho. But they did do their research in trying to figure out what some of the stories that led to this story were.
Nice.
So definitely go listen to them. Also, in the regards to the villains, and I wanted to say this earlier, but there's a video by Shannon McCarter from Network 1901. So if you go to Network 1901's YouTube channel, you can watch the video of Shannon Carter talking about some of the differences between Moana and Frozen. Now, she prefers Frozen.
Okay.
So there may be some
love it.
there may be some like infighting, because I know that in the comments everybody else loves Moana. It's like this big fight. But she has some really insightful things to say, especially about Maui's character from a storytelling standpoint, that I think it's it's worth your watch.
Of course.
It shouldn't change your whether or not you love this movie. Don't let it change that. Just go watch the video and just listen to what she says because I think it's insightful.
Yeah. And going back to the Story Cauldron one, it's worth a listen because Garrett, one of their hosts in that, says one of my favorite lines from any podcast I've ever heard now.
Yeah.
Talking about hey.
Yeah.
He says, I hate chickens. He says, chickens are my third least favorite bird. I'm like, that's so specific. And I love it.
I didn't know. I have not rank ordered my favorite birds. So anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to get that out there.
Nice.
So, I think the point is there's no clear-cut character villain. I mean, we don't know what the Kakamura's motivations are. They want the heart, obviously, but I don't know if they're evil at the core. I don't know, but I love that there's no stereotypical villain.
Right.
Just like I love that there's no love story in this movie. This is a very different Disney movie.
Right.
That's what we liked about this film.
Yeah.
That they didn't have to have a love interest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love, we'll talk more about this later, but I love that the character that you think is the villain, Teka, in the end is redeemed and forgiven and not vanquished and not destroyed. So, I mean, we can talk more about that later. But
one thing you just mentioned that I think is really fantastic that I never had thought of before was the love story in this, if there is one, is for a village.
Yes. Love our people.
And their environment.
Yes.
And the environment, they love this island.
Yes.
They love this group of islands. They love this area. And I think it's such a we did a podcast on Avatar. And Avatar, I think, just beats you over the head with this environment message. Not that we don't need environment message. We do need environment message.
Yes.
We need to take care of our environment. But if you see it from this film, they worked an environmental message in, and they never beat you over the head with it.
They didn't.
Because it's a love story.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to copy Ferngully to do it.
This is true, this is true. So I think I love that aspect of it, though. I had not thought of that, but the love story is really kind of about that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, let's kind of move into this idea of redemption. So I can't think of a whole lot of movies where the movie ends with the villain, the darkest character in the whole movie, being fully restored to good and fully redeemed and fully sanctified, which is such an encouraging picture. Like, that's our hope for ourselves as Christ followers. And even, I mean, I think whatever your worldview is, you want redemption. You want a chance to be redeemed. You want a second chance. You don't want to be written off.
However you define that. But
Yes. So it's so beautiful to see that, and I can't think of a whole lot of other movies that do that so boldly. And just, for me, one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, and I think Sandra talked about this in her video too, is the end. It's that moment when, whether you figured it out ahead of time or not, I didn't, because I try not to figure things out, but when Moana says, you know, this is not who you are. You know who you are, and that whole scene. I still get goosebumps when I watch that
every
scene.
time I see that scene.
It's just beautiful.
It's powerful.
And you can enjoy it because the water looks amazing.
It looks amazing.
But let's talk a little bit about the redemptive qualities in this movie, because it's not just Teka. I mean, Maui gets redeemed.
Yes.
Right.
We can talk a little bit about that because I know from a story perspective, Jay, you've got kind of some opinions on Maui's redemption and what that looks like. And
it's my
maybe
it's like my one issue with the movie.
Yeah.
If I take issue with anything, it's one.
Talk about it.
Oh, right now? Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to differentiate one thing really quick. Is that, like, I think that there's two types of redemption that we may be talking about here too. Because there's one is you are redeemed because you made amends for yourself.
Yes.
The other is sort of more of an absolution. Someone else says, I redeem you.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And I think that we're seeing more of an I redeem you. So whether it's Moana and her like helping Tafiti become absolved of this thing that she did, I think where that gets a little bit odd is that Maui's character is sort of absolved. He receives absolution, which I think we would all say is good, and that we believe that, like, Christ has absolved us, right? Yes. Christ's work, if we accept it. So, but the problem is that there's a part of this for me that I go, yeah, but he's not getting any repercussions. Like, I don't know that Maui leaves the film understanding truly the kind of pain that he's caused.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the one aspect of it that, because we see that he definitely is a sympathetic character. They make us sympathetic to him because we kind of realize like, oh yeah, okay, so he's not just Mr. You're welcome,
Funny
prideful,
guy, yes.
funny guy, right? There's more to him than that. So we sort of start to forgive him because he shows us that he's vulnerable. He's not exactly this untouchable,
Tough guy.
such a tough guy.
But
So
he
I think
doesn't necessarily grow.
he doesn't necessarily grow. He makes a growth step, but we don't see it happen because he comes back and says, "I'm going to help you." But there's no indication of like, well, what did he experience separate from Moana that he like? How did he reflect on this? Like, we don't see that happen.
Yes.
So I know that like the first time I saw this movie, I just felt like at the end of it that I was like, wait. He's just sorry? Like, that's it? Like, that was my response to it. And I think we accept it because we feel sympathetic towards him.
Yes.
And we
But
know
has
that
he
he's
learned
kind of,
anything from
yeah,
it?
but has he learned anything
Yes.
from it? That's the one thing that I go, and that's really what Shannon McCarter in her video is talking about, how that piece of the story plays out.
Yeah.
And I think that she compares it to Frozen because she goes, I understand what it's like. She's saying that's about herself, about what it's like to be cast out as the Ice Queen. Is it Elsa? Yeah. It's Elsa. Okay. As Elsa, I don't have kids, so Elsa is the one that's cast out, right? So she goes, I know what it's like to feel different and to feel rejected.
Oh, yeah.
So I can also kind of see what it's like to come back from that.
Yes.
But what happened with Maui? Like, how did he make his transformation? Because we watch her make her transformation, but how does Maui make his? And so I think that that's a really good point from a storytelling perspective.
Yes.
Of it is left when he's sitting in Tafiti's hand and he's kind of like, sorry. It's like, and now it's all good.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it should be all good.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think there's that component to it.
Yeah. The only thing I would say to that is Tafiti, just before then, was fully redeemed.
Right.
And you see the redemption of all of the islands. You see all of the darkness and the blackness go away, and the blooms and the flowers and the plants and everything, and the sunlight comes out. And so it's kind of like, in that instance, if Maui didn't get the chance to be redeemed also, it's kind of like, wow, sucks to be him.
Yeah,
you know?
But
I don't know. What do you think?
He's a part of it. The one thing that does come to mind is his ability to come back and apologize and fight for her. I would say that's probably not his personality of that tough guy, but he's like, you know what? Darn it. He's gonna. I would say that's probably the slightest change. In Maui, but nothing where like, hey, what did you really learn? Right. But I would say that's the slight change that I saw in Maui. Yeah. Yeah, like a tough guy wouldn't come back and apologize.
Right, yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but I mean, we also might see more of his transformation in the next film.
Yeah, if there's a sequel, I would say
exactly. Like,
do you guys want a sequel? I have mixed feelings on that
because sequels don't really, come strong sometimes.
Yeah,
especially Disney sequels. They don't have the best track record.
If they can do the Toy Story type sequel, like Toy Story had great sequels.
That had great sequels.
But I agree, nothing else. A lot of Disney sequels have struggled lately. Do you know that it was originally in Walt's vision, and also in John Lasseter, who is the Pixar guy, the guy behind Pixar. It was originally in both of their original visions not to have sequels.
Wow. Yeah.
And they've broken from that, and
which I think is good.
Like, don't ruin the magic.
Exactly.
Don't ruin the magic.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk a little bit about calling in this movie. Obviously, Moana has a calling, and so kind of a question I have. Maybe this is obvious, and I'm just missing it. But where do you think Moana's calling comes from? Is it completely internal? Is it partially external? Is it as simple as the ocean saw her save that little turtle and thought, oh, that's my girl? I mean, like, what do you think?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
Mostly internal, both. I would say both.
Yeah.
Because the way she was raised, you're connected to your culture, your people, your family. So that's a drive for her. Yeah. So it's internal also because of the type of person she is. Her heart, compassion, love. So with those two combined, those two factors, it's driven her to step out of her comfort zone and to go out and do what her dad's telling her not to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, understanding or coming to terms with calling is, I've said this like a billion times in this podcast. I sound like a broken record, but
It's
it
first
really,
time for me.
well,
So I wanna hear it.
it's just, well, I mean, just on this podcast, even,
Okay.
it's like the worldview you have.
Yes.
Because if you don't have if your worldview is like, okay, things originate in the brain and there's nothing beyond the brain because it's just the brain, right? Or what is the mind? What is the brain? What is your spirit? What is your soul? Like all of those things probably have some sort of indication of what we refer to as calling. And so I don't know if you don't believe in spiritual things or you don't believe in a soul, can you have anything but an internal calling? Like, can you have an external calling when you don't believe in this? I don't know. I mean, my worldview says there are those things.
Yeah.
So for me, it's easy because I'm like, I think every person's calling is unique internal giftedness. Like you basically said it.
Yes.
You said it much more simple and more more concrete than I did. But like it's internal calling that like they're gifted at something.
Yes.
But then I feel like my worldview says that on top of that there are other spiritual callings as well and callings of your soul.
Yes.
And I think that's right. Like what you said, it's internal and external. It's both.
A little bit of both, yeah.
And I was actually gonna pick on you and
pick on me,
maybe embarrass you. No, it's all compliments.
I dare you.
So I think you're I think what the world will tell us oftentimes is that, or actually I think at least our culture, especially here in the States, with the individualistic like culture that we have, is that a lot of times it will say your calling is important for you to like make you rich and famous. Like once I find my calling, then I'll be famous, then I'll be rich, then I'll be whatever.
Yes.
And what I think that that's a pollution of calling. Because I don't think that calling means that you will be rich and famous. I think that calling means that you will have an impact on others.
Yes.
And I think that the coolest thing is like, as you as a worship leader, you're a fantastic worship leader. I don't think that I've ever worshipped with a leader that was better. Like you're the best worship leader I've ever worshipped with, right?
Wow.
Yeah, but the thing is,
go to
you're
more
not likely to
churches.
be rich. Well, I'm just going to say, you're not likely to be rich and famous.
No, not doing that.
Right? And if you were doing it because you wanted to be rich and famous, I think your calling would be diminished.
Yes.
Yeah.
So calling is a weird thing because I think our culture will talk about calling and like, oh, that person was called to do that because they're rich and famous. And it's like, yeah, but...
Society, yeah.
Yeah, like they could have impacted like one or two other people and maybe they were called to just do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And why can't we respect that in them?
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just so I think it is internal and external. Both.
Yeah. And it's kind of about what's your picture of success look like.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
Is it financial success? Is it status? Is it power?
Relationships, yeah.
Or is it relationships? Is it impacting people? Is it leaving a legacy for your kids?
Yeah.
You know, is it being a positive presence in those around you?
Yep,
So
exactly.
yeah, I think for Moana's calling, I really sort of see it come together in the scene after Maui has deserted her and they take off for the first time and she gets revisited by her grandmother.
Yes.
And then she sings the song where she's like, I am a girl who loves my island. I'm a girl who loves the sea.
Yes.
And you sort of see this duality in her. And it's when she finally kind of embraces that duality and realizes I can value these things from my past and embrace my calling for the future. I feel like that's when she really kind of becomes who she is. I mean, we know that because that song ends with her saying, I am Moana.
Yes.
So, I mean, you know, we know that. But I feel like that's kind of the beautiful picture of her calling in this movie because it's not just... Her calling is not just about where am I going. Her calling also has to do with where have I been and how do I respect that and embrace that and allow it to inform where I'm going.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the beautiful part of the movie too.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about fear. So we've talked about suffering, we've talked about calling, redemption. There's a lot of pictures of fear in this movie too. There's the village chief, Moana's dad. He's afraid of people getting hurt.
Yes. And he's instilled that in her.
Yes,
Yeah.
and so she's brave, she's very courageous, but she's still fearful. She still
Yes.
doesn't know what she's going to encounter out there. Maui's afraid of being nothing, You know, he's afraid of not having the status, of not being the hero.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we've talked about fear a lot on the podcast before.
Yep.
And we've talked about how it's not necessarily a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's healthy fear, there's positive fear,
Yes.
there's reverence, there's
Mm-hmm.
safety. So Sisa, what's kind of your experience with the concept of fear as you watch this movie, and how does that stand out to you?
Referring back to our culture, because
Yeah.
since it's our culture,
Yeah.
they always, I said that, instill fear, because that's what they do.
Yeah.
They meaning our parents. So they instill the fear in us. So of course it's natural for every parent to do that, so we don't step beyond the border, you know.
Yeah.
But for Moana's case, fear, she's so brave. She's so brave. I think Disney did a great job with just depicting that essence about her.
Yeah.
Also, although she did have a little bit of it, that fear allowed her to build her character, just become stronger. And that's in every person. There's always going to be some obstacle, some lie that the enemy is just putting in our ear to try and prevent us from stepping into our calling.
Yeah.
But that fear, she sees it, she tackles it, and she becomes who she was meant to be. And she's much more stronger. So Disney did a great job with that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd like to hear your part on the fear.
Yeah. Why don't you go first this time?
Yeah.
You keep kicking over to me.
Daryl. Gosh.
Yeah, I mean, similar to what we talked about with suffering, I like watching how people respond to their fear in this movie. Because you sort of get the whole gamut, you
Yes.
know. You get, I think Moana is a great picture of allowing fear to be a healthy presence
Yes.
and allowing it to inform your level of safety and sort of embracing it in a way that keeps you from becoming narcissistic or just overly proud and thinking, I can do this, I can do this, I can do
Yes.
this, but really being honest about what's around you. And then you get Maui, whose fear completely cripples him. So,
Yes.
and anybody who's dealt with anxiety before gets that.
Yes.
Like, it can be completely crippling. And then you have the village chief, who is suffering from this traumatic experience, the loss of his best friend. And so there's a bit of both in there. Like, there's some very good reasons for him to be fearful. He's learned some things that should impact how he feels. But it's gone a little bit too far, and he's limiting other people, and he's limiting his kids, which is something that, again, just resonates with me in a huge way. Like, I love my boys. I want them to be safe, but I also don't want to smother them.
Yes.
And I don't want my fear to keep them from becoming who they can be.
Generational, yeah.
So, yeah. What do you think, Jay?
I mean, you guys have both said it. I as I was reflecting on it this time, I don't know that fear is good or bad. It is.
Yeah.
It's what you do with it.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes, completely.
because I don't think that it would be, if you said to me that Moana's dad should not be fearful, I would go like, no, he has every reason to be fearful. Like,
Yes.
if what he had to go through, like, that's awful.
Yeah.
Now what he does with that, I'd go, okay, well, maybe he's let that take over, right? I've talked about this before on this podcast, but I have a fear of flying. I hate flying. But I love going to Hawaii. We
Yes.
talked about, I visited Hawaii. Like, I love that so much that it's like, yeah, I'm going to board this plane. Like, I hate it. I do not like any minute of the flight, but I do it anyways because
Yes.
it's like, hey, look, you need. And I was in an emergency landing. Actually, by the way, going on the way to Hawaii, a different time. Yeah. So that kind of stuff, I think you just have to. You have to, and I'm sure that there's areas of my life right now where I'm fearful of something, and it's preventing me from taking steps that I should be taking.
Yes.
And I think that we just need to look at that and go, that's no good. Like, it's not good to let the fear overcome you.
Yeah.
It is okay that it's there because fear teaches us.
Yes.
Right.
The next time I try to go out beyond the waves, I need to make sure that I'm prepared for it.
Yes.
I need to make sure that the people around me are prepared for it. Those kind of things. They teach you, but it doesn't mean that it should just prevent you from doing something altogether.
Yeah.
So.
And it connects to calling. If you don't beat through that fear, you're never going to get in or reach the calling that was purposed for you.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
All connected.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, so you've talked about how great the water looks in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked a little bit about the music. Sandra referenced the music in her video. Obviously, this movie looks incredible. It sounds incredible. The music is amazing. But I think it's not just, there's a great story, there's great visuals, and there's great music. Like, it's all intertwined.
Yes.
And I feel like the visuals and the music really heavily inform the story. So, talk to me a little bit about that. How do you see the music and the visuals driving the story?
I think it's important because if you look at something like Lion King, it's setting, okay, that's that culture, how do we bring out the essence of that culture, those people? And that's important for everybody. For instance, like all these shows, Vikings, Outlander, they all have something similar. Their music brings out, okay, what is this people about? So it had to have been done for Moana. Who are these Polynesians?
Yeah.
How do we connect with them? Or what is it about these people that makes them who they are? So I think every culture, it's music. Something different about our music that makes us who we are. The music was key in this one because for us, as coming from a Polynesian, we love music, we love dancing, we love our attire. Everything has to go, hand in hand. It was perfect because, not to say it was done by a Samoan, but it was a Fijian choir. Different, and also the other musicians were all Samoan. It was so powerful. Yeah. It really, because I could look at it, see, like if I see the movie being played by my kids, I'll look at it, watch it. Oh, cool. But when I hear the music though, it's a whole different, it just brings out something different out of me. Like I'll just have to play it and I just have to sing it with my kids in the car. But, it's so powerful. So powerful.
One thing I've wondered about the music, and I haven't been able to find an answer to this, maybe you know, is the non-English lyrics in the music, is that an actual Pacific Islander language, or is it just sort of a language that they came up with using common sounds and tones from different languages and stuff?
As far as I know, there are certain songs. I never asked, but my friend, it's her dad that did the music, Tabaka. I haven't asked them if they went and created something different because I do hear Samoan in there. I hear our language in there. In fact, one of the songs, it's entirely in Samoan. But when I hear the other music, I said to myself, it must be the other languages. I don't think they would create their own, but I believe it's other languages
that
they've incorporated.
Pieces,
But that's, I think they're just taking from different languages, creating their.
Which song is fully in Samoan?
Gosh, I don't remember which one. The one is Tato Tanata for Lau.
Oh, the best one.
I
love that song.
I love that song.
Okay, well, we'll talk later. You have to tell me what it's saying. I want the translation.
Yes. So.
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things I love about it too is, a lot of musicals, the music is the emotion, right?
Yes.
So you have the dialogue in between songs that carries the story, and then when they need to convey an emotion, they sing a song.
Yes.
And that's a good formula. Sometimes for me with musicals, especially movie musicals, it feels very formulaic. It's like, here's a little bit of story, and now here's a song about how we feel about what's going on.
Right.
And the song almost feels like you don't even have to listen to the whole song. Like, it's pointless. It's like, okay, it's a love song. You're in love. I get it. Let's go on to the next thing, Yeah. And it's very much like A and B, A and B, A and B, Yeah. What I love about Moana is it feels so much more organic. And the way the music flows in and out and stuff like that. I feel like it's such a good representation of what other musicals are trying to accomplish.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it really does kind of take me on a journey. So, but I don't know. What do you think, Jay, about music and visuals?
Well, I would take it from a completely different perspective altogether because I love what you said. I think it's amazing, but I have no knowledge of that, right? So it's like,
well, that's what I have to say. Cool. Outlander and Vikings.
Exactly. But But for me, what makes the music so amazing is, and you kind of were touching on it, is the storytelling done through the music.
Yes.
This is probably the highest praise that a geek can give a film about a film's music. It's John Williams-esque.
Oh, yeah.
Because each of the characters has their theme.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you hear Moana sing, every time there's a bit of that theme that's weaved through like
The story.
Yeah, so we're watching her develop as a character, and all of the emotions that she has are coming out in the song.
Yeah.
All of the inspiration. There's this really fascinating thing they do, especially with the what's the name of the first song that she sings? The not the
How Far I'll Go.
Yeah. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not the first song she sings, but
Okay.
but that's
But
what
her
I'm referring
theme.
to.
Her theme
yeah.
song. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has this awesome rising action to it,
Oh,
where
yeah.
she's kind of like appreciative of her village, but then she's like dreaming about it.
Yes.
And it's just crescendoing to this place where she's like, "I'm going for it." You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's just perfect. The story needs that at that time to push itself
Yes.
forward. So it's not a stop break music.
Yes.
This is a continuation of the theme. This is
Yeah.
a continuation of the song. And even when you see like Maui's theme, you hear his pride. You hear why his pride is there, because he calls himself an ordinary demi-guy.
Yes.
Which I didn't know until I watched the actual subtitles. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh.
Okay. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Demi-guy,
Okay, I
not
know
demigod.
that.
Yeah, and he's saying that because he wants to be relatable to the people.
Yeah.
And so they've captured it really well. And this is Lin-Manuel Miranda, partially,
Yes.
right? So talk about storytelling.
Who is not Pacific
I mean,
Islander in any way. He's Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
So
But that's he's from an
talent.
island,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So like there is
He
that
can relate to
component.
that,
He can
yeah.
relate to that.
and he's
aspect of
insanely
it.
talented.
Oh my god.
Insanely talented. So and even Tamatoa, when he gets his theme going, it really describes
You're right.
who his
Yeah.
character is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things I learned from a book called Wired for Story is our brains are wired for story. And one of the things that our brains are wired to do is ask why. Why does this occur? And when we get songs like those songs, the story is progressing, but we're getting why questions answered through the song.
Yeah.
And so the brain is just
true.
our brain is responding to that, going like, oh yeah, okay, I love that.
Yes.
Now I know this character.
Yeah.
And then it makes it just real for us. So I think that's part of the reason why the music is so amazing.
And I think you talked about how the songs tell the story.
Yeah.
And they do it so well that you can get the story, you can get the feels from the story
Absolutely.
without watching the movie. So you can listen to
true.
the music.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess maybe you have to have seen the movie in order for this to connect completely.
Yes.
But when I listen to the soundtrack, and we listen to it a lot,
Oh my gosh,
because
yeah,
Dolan wants to
beautiful.
listen to it in the car and stuff like that, and I get that same feel for like when I'm watching the movie.
Yeah.
So when I hear, this is not who you are, you know who you are, I'm like, I still feel that, even if I'm not
Powerful.
watching it.
Yeah.
And I can't think of many other movies. Like when I hear Let It Go, I don't feel the joy of the Frozen Fantasyland or anything like that,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it's just special in that way, because I think it does tell the story
Through the songs.
in a really unique way, in a way
But see,
that's
that's
better than a
how
lot
John
of
Williams
movies.
is for me.
That's true.
I can be listening to a John Williams song and
Yeah.
know exactly where in the movie it occurs.
Yeah.
Get all of the feeling of that song right back in it, and
Totally.
be like, I know exactly what's going on here, and I
Yeah.
love it every time. So I
Like
think
when I hear that slowed down Jedi theme, I can just picture Rey holding the lightsaber, closing her eyes,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I
Exactly.
know. Yeah.
Great
Yeah.
perspective.
No, it's definitely a special soundtrack. This is not a question that I gave to you guys ahead of time, but it's just kind of something I'm wondering about. A lot of times when I watch this movie, I'm so inspired by Moana specifically and her journey and everything that she goes through. Sometimes I actually will lose interest in Maui and Tamatoa and the Kakamora are pretty cool. I don't really lose interest in them, but Maui and Tamatoa and some of the elements that almost seem like they're there, like Hey, and some of the elements that are there for comedic value or to maybe give us a vibe that's similar to other Disney movies in the
Yes.
past.
Formula, yeah.
So there's a bit of a duality in that for me. Do you guys feel that at all? Or do you think it just meshes beautifully?
Well, I think if I were the writer of the story, what I would have said to you was, perfect
Yeah.
because it's her story.
Yes.
Yes.
So the other people. So when I bring up my complaint about Maui's transition, it's not his story.
Yes.
So that's why it doesn't ruin the movie because we don't really. I mean, it's like okay, fine, he did that. I kind of wonder why he did that, but it doesn't ruin the story.
No, it
There's no
doesn't.
component of that. So for me, I go if I was writing this story, I go this is Moana's story. If those other characters they become lost for a moment or two,
Yes.
that's okay. Are they still real? Do they still make her have forward movement in her journey?
Yes.
Yeah.
If that's true, totally cool.
Done the job.
Right? Yeah.
I guess for me, if there's something in the movie that I will skip while I'm watching it, if I'm trying to save time and I'm just going to watch part of it, I'll skip You're Welcome and I'll skip Tamatoa's song.
I'm not gonna lie, I skip it on the track too.
Do you?
I do.
I mean, they're good songs.
My kids love it though, but I'm like,
Yeah. They're good songs, but for me, they don't have the inspirational impact that the rest of the songs have, the rest of the scenes have too. You know?
Yeah.
So I mean, not that I'm saying it's bad. They definitely inform Moana's journey and stuff like that, but I guess I'm just so into the Moana character specifically.
Love. I think it's just also for a comedic value.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they add those in there, but definitely Moana's story is the key right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that probably Maui's journey suffers from too is just that it's almost impossible not to like Dwayne Johnson.
I know.
Right? Like he's just such a likable person.
Yes.
He's one of the most followed people on Instagram, right? Like we all follow him for a reason. I don't know if I still follow him. I definitely did, but I was like, he's depressing me. I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. to work out. I can't do this anymore. But
Stop it, Dwayne.
Stop it. Just take a day off, please. But I think
we know this is pre-recorded.
exactly. So I think that's probably why so I like that song because I think of him singing it. I see his expressions in the character when he's singing.
Yeah.
And I think that particular scene, I thought it was, and I would love your perspective on this just because it's from your culture.
Yes.
But the fact that the tattoos moved and were animated
Yeah.
in his body,
I love that.
I thought that was so cool and so well done. That he had characters. That he had like the angel and the devil character. It was just really an angel character because he was always doing good things.
Yeah.
But that was influencing him.
Yes.
Right? And I think that there was a component of that could be, I'm looking at my tattoos to remind me of who I should be.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was kind of cool. But so I think that even that is like really clever. So I like that song for some of those reasons.
Yeah.
But if you ask me like, dude, I don't listen to the soundtrack. So I don't know if you would tell me like, if I did listen to the soundtrack, I might skip it too, just because it's like, well, that's I like it because of where it is in the movie. I like it because of what's happening with him during the movie, I like the visuals.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of it. I don't know. So
the funny thing about the soundtrack, there's another version of that song that Lin-Manuel Miranda does with, I can't remember the name of the singer.
It's,
really?
Oh gosh.
Is it Jordan something?
Yes, Jordan Fisher.
Jordan Fisher? Yeah, that sounds right.
Isn't that in the credits?
Yes.
It's over the credits,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay,
and
listen to
it's
that.
like a hip hop version of the song.
Yeah.
And
I love that version.
That's not my genre, so when I first heard that, I'm like, okay, I don't like this as much. But when I really gave it a chance and listened to it, I'm like, I like this better.
Yeah.
Because it's just a different feel, you know? It's not like the happy-go-lucky, you're welcome.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's a little darker. It's got a little something different to it.
Yeah.
And Jordan Fisher's an amazing
Amazing
singer.
singer.
It's crazy.
I just want to say you touched on something really important in the film is the tattoos.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was really vital because that is our culture. And the fact that you had said that, like he always had to refer back to his tattoos because what's in the tattoos, what we have in there is everything is from our ancestors. So we don't just go get a tattoo to get a tattoo.
Yeah.
Every symbol means something. So with him referring back to that, good, evil,
Yeah.
that's Disney's take on it, but it's probably, our ancestors telling us, hey, this is who we are. This is where we come from. So that was an important thing in the film, was the tattoos.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they hired one of our friends to be the consultant of
Really?
the tattoos,
No
especially the father. They had to get it right because it's a Samoan tattoo.
yeah.
Had to make sure that was done correctly. So
That's cool.
yeah,
That's
I love
awesome.
that. I love that Disney did that.
Yeah.
A lot of our friends were a part of the film. Our friend was the one that did the what do you call them? the choreography, and then another friend of mine was the one that did all the costuming.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our people were involved doing it, but what was beautiful about it is that everyone made sure they had their I's dotted, T's crossed, that it was
cool.
perfect as far as the ancestral part of it all.
So I was going to ask you about that. Talk a little bit more about that, because you were part of a collective of people that worked on this movie specifically so that they would get the culture right.
Yes, they wanted to make sure that everybody that was involved is from the islands.
Yeah.
And they actually they included a lot of key people in there, which is the ones that they had asked for costume, tattoos, choreography, and songs are all part of the community now. That they actually do that. That's what their gifts are.
Yeah.
So they didn't just ask random people from the islands, hey, can you guys do that? No, these people have actually studied it, made sure that they were done correctly from which island, and not, just pulling anything out, or also combining cultures together. No. So they did a good job with that. Yeah. As far as gathering the right, what do you call it? Not historians, or I don't know how you would call that, with their gifts. Their particular
expertise.
Yeah. And how did it come to you? Like, what was that experience like? How did you get involved?
Okay, so I had to audition over the phone.
Okay.
A friend of mine who is on the show, the Blue Store, Big Store, with
Superstore.
Superstore.
Oh, who's your friend?
Kaliko. She's the Hawaiian one in the show.
Oh.
Yeah. So Kaliko calls me.
She's hilarious.
She's hilarious. So she calls me and says, "Sisa, I can't make it. I got to go in to shoot. Can you audition over the phone with them?" I'm like, for what? From what I said, I thought they were done. So when they did that, and I heard they weren't finished, we came in, and it was a privilege for me because Amy Hill was one of the actors there. She's doing amazing. She's from 51st Dates.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she was in there. Branscombe is another known actor. So we all came together, did the collective voices, and
is she the one in the diner in 51st Dates?
Yes.
Oh,
and she's doing well right now. She's actually got picked up as a series regular for another show.
Okay.
So she's doing amazing work. Yeah. But it was special for all of us to be a part of that, especially when we thought it was done.
Yeah.
We thought it was completely finished. But it was great. I think Disney did such a great job making sure that they were true to our history.
Yeah.
To our people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. It's cool. And especially with the fact that it's an amalgam, you know? It's different cultures. It's Samoan, it's Fijian.
Tongan, Fijian, Tahitian, yes.
But it works for everybody. Like, it really is a fair representation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we are one people, you know?
Yeah.
That's how we look at it.
But just to get those different colors in there and those different emphases and stuff like that, it's impressive.
And there's like, 6 different Polynesian Pacific Islands? More? Okay. Yeah. Cool. I went to the last time I was on Oahu, I went to the Polynesian Cultural Center.
My favorite. It's like Disney for me.
Yeah, it is. It's totally like Disney. Actually, that's what my friend told me. So I work at the university, and one of the students who actually just graduated was going through our entrepreneurship program, and he's from Hawaii. And so I told him, I'm going to Hawaii. So and I'm like, just tell me, like, where can I go bodyboarding? What do you recommend? Like, where should I go? Like, and one of the things was, actually, one of the things was my mother-in-law had never been, and my wife had never been to a luau. And so they were saying, like, we should go to a luau. Wow. And I'm like, well, hold it on a minute. Like, I've been several times to the islands. I've not been to a luau. And part of it is because I feel like sometimes
you gotta go to one that somebody tells you. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes I feel like they're almost more like
just a tourist.
Yeah.
attraction.
It's a touristy. It's not really a cultural
authentic
thing. Yeah, it's just kind of like a fake one, you know. And I'm like, so I don't want to, because like when I told my brother the same thing, he's like, yeah, it feels like you could almost be like offending the culture by going to the wrong luau, right? And so we were very skeptical. So I asked.
What's his name?
His name is Christian Kama.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't think he listens. But if you're listening, Christian, like,
Christian,
what's up?
Listen.
Yeah. I asked him. I said, where should we go? And he said, you gotta go to the Polynesian Cultural Center.
Yes.
Because he had worked there.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah. So we ended up going to that. It was fantastic. And they actually have a show there right now. I didn't think I was going to talk about this, but they have a really cool show that they do too. Yes, and it's done amazingly well. It is a
theatrical style,
full on like Disney
music,
quality.
Yes.
Because you know how you'll say like, go see this show and you're going to maybe it's not a cultural center, but it's like a historic area.
Yeah.
And it's like, that show is going to be like really like not that good. Like this show, we almost skipped it because.
Oh, I'm so glad you did.
Yeah, because we were like, it's getting late. We want to get back to do some other stuff. Like, but we went, and we're like, we're so glad we stayed for this because it was really amazing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful show.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, really, really good.
So now I have to go.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
You can go get on a plane, man.
We've been wanting to go back, so
Yeah.
I'll be happy to do that. I don't have any complaints. That kind of wraps up all the questions I have. Was there anything else you guys wanted to cover? Was there anything else that you've been dying to say about Moana that we didn't get a chance to hit on?
I don't think so for me. The only other thing I would say is that there were several points, and I was watching it on Netflix.
Yeah.
So go catch it while you can, because I know Disney's going to pull all their stuff from Netflix. So go watch it. But one of the things that occurred to me was that there's so much clarity. You know, you used to be able to judge CGI based on like the hair.
Yeah.
Yes.
But watching like Moana's hair move when she moves, it's just amazing. Like it's stunning because a lot of times too you have this. They're getting to the point where they can make fake people look really real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But for a while there, like even like Toy Story avoided showing people for the first film, I believe, because it was like they're just gonna look
showed
terrible.
them from behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was like a not trying to be realistic.
Yes.
But the way that they captured people's emotions and their movements and their body types and things like that, like it was just really interesting and fun.
Yes.
All of the way through. So the animation,
Yeah.
I'd say, is amazing. We didn't even really talk about animation in that much degree.
Well, and there's one scene specifically. So it's actually during You're Welcome. It's when they're singing that song, and they have a lot of 2D animation going on with like the sort of tattoo representations of the fish swimming in the background and stuff like that.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Apparently, Flounder from Little Mermaid is in there. So
really?
if you look
Okay,
quickly
I'm
enough,
gonna
you
look
can
at
catch him.
Nice.
But when they show that, and then they have Maui and Moana like walking across the screen over that,
Yes.
they look like live action. Like it looks like Roger Rabbit. It looks like a live action person on top of animation.
Interesting.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
With the hair thing that you're talking about, I haven't seen it yet because it was extras on the DVD.
Yeah.
They said that they actually had a real girl, flip her hair,
No
so they could
way.
actually get.
Crazy.
I know.
That's
It's
awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, and they made Moana after Zootopia, right?
I have no idea.
Because I think
I
there's
don't
a scene in Zootopia where they're selling bootleg DVDs, and one of them, it's not Moana because it hadn't come out yet, but it looks like Moana.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
It's like a little
that's
Easter egg.
funny.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But the reason I bring up Zootopia is they put a ton of effort in that into the clothes that the animals were wearing.
Yeah.
Because there's been other movies with anthropomorphic animals and
Yes.
they've
Yeah,
worn
sure,
clothes and stuff, but it's like, how would clothes really look on these animals?
Yeah.
And the fur in the animals
Yep.
and the hairs
Oh
and
my
stuff like that.
gosh.
And they said there are more hairs
Wow.
in Zootopia
Uh-huh.
than every single other Disney Animation Studios movie
Really?
combined. Like
Wow.
100 times more.
Wow.
Like it's off the charts.
Can you imagine the computing power it takes
Yeah.
to like render each one of those?
And then Moana came after that.
Wow.
So like,
So they had that good to go.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
kind of like figured it out. Yeah.
The
That's-
sloth is my favorite.
oh yes.
I saw that somebody actually dressed
Flash.
up like that at work.
Yeah.
Had the whole thing sitting and
Yeah.
pointing.
And
That's great. I have,
then
I have like a big hand with a big thing.
yeah. And I can only imagine like what's to come too. Like,
Oh,
have you seen the
gosh.
trailers for Coco, the new Pixar movie?
I have not paid
Only
a
the
lot of
poster.
attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a few trailers, and there's one, I think one of the early ones specifically,
Yeah.
where the boy in the movie sits down with a guitar, and it's either his grandfather or it's his father or some. I haven't seen the movie, obviously, because it's not out yet.
Yeah.
But somebody in his family who is a famous, like, mariachi guitar player. And so you watch him play guitar to mimic his dad.
Oh.
And as a guitar
I saw
player,
that part.
I know that his fingering
Yeah.
is correct.
Oh my
Yeah. That's
It's
awesome.
accurate.
That's cool. That's super cool.
Oh my
It's
god.
like, I've never seen that in an animated movie before. I'm
You
like,
rarely see it in non-animated.
Really?
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
they're not showing it.
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Wow.
so I'm looking forward to that.
Cool.
But cool. Well, Sisa, thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for having me. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool to have somebody that was involved in the production of the film, like and whose culture it is.
Yes.
Those two things, adding that to the podcast, is really phenomenal.
Oh.
So thank you for taking the
I
time.
am so happy. Totally.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
And tell us, so where can people find you?
I'm on social media, Sisa Grey. And
SisaGrey.com.
SisaGrey.com too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, so work requires us to have this.
Of course.
Still trying to manage it daily. It's like,
You gotta do it.
I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and then wait, I gotta update all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly.
But
Too much to think about.
Too much to think
Too
about.
much.
This world just puts too much on our shoulders.
Well, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for
It's been a
having
pleasure
me,
to have
boys.
you.
Really,
So-
bumps.
Yeah.
And everybody out there, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Yes.